bunch of guys got tagged, 8 guys in total. We have Brian Burns, Justin Matabuke, Josh Allen, Jalen Johnson, Michael Pittman, Antoine Winfield, which kind of sailed under the radar. I didn't even hear about that one. I had to find that one. T. Higgins, obviously, that we've covered, and L'Jarius Sneed that we've covered as well, all tagged. So, Drew, with these guys tagged, I want to just kind of go through real quick. When I say, okay, Brian Burns is tagged, their next up free agent to get a contract, are they more likely or less likely now to get a contract? So we're going to start off with the Carolina Panthers. Brian Burns got tagged. So their next top priority free agent is their linebacker, Frankie Louvu, 3 years, $10 million a year. Is this a guy who's more likely or less likely going to get signed here?
I don't have much thoughts on the Panthers and what they're going to do. Like even looking for ways for them to save money. It's like, they don't even really have much in the way of saving money outside of maybe like Andy Dalton. But
right.
I think if you have established talent on that team at this point, you need talent.
Mm-hmm.
And anything that's short term, I mean, I would prefer a 2-year deal over a 3-year deal, just because this is a player that's probably not part of your long term future, but you still have to roster these guys. So I don't think franchise tagging him is going to change the outlook on their off season too much.
Mm-hmm.
But boy, man, if they could go back and they could redo that trade, they would have sent him off to Chicago instead of DJ Moore.
Yeah.
Right. Like Chicago wanted the pick and a player, and they basically said this player, this player, this player, and they sent off the wide receiver. They should have just sent off Burns at this point because they haven't done much with him. The team hasn't done much. So,
I mean, it's worked out for Carolina though, right? DJ Moore goes off and he gets a career year, and then they go trade for Montez Sweat for a second, right? Or it was a couple late round picks or something like that. And he goes and he pops off. So it worked out pretty well for Chicago, outside of the quarterback situation. Moving on to Justin Matabuke for the Ravens. Their next up priority free agent is the linebacker Patrick Queen. Right now, looking at a 4-year contract, averaging $18.13 million a year. Looking at them, are they more likely or less likely to go ahead and sign a guy like this now?
I think they should resign him. I think that he should have been the priority personally, but they already have a really good linebacker over there, so it's hard to say. I think that for his motivations, the players' motivations, I think he's in line for a big payday. So I don't think that the Ravens would be the most competitive offer on the table. And also the opportunity for him to kind of step in as the star player, the star defender, the star linebacker, as opposed to right now, he's kind of the second fiddle there. So I think it's unlikely.
He's Dre Greenlaw to Fred Warner.
With 2 good Achilles.
Yeah.
I think that it's unlikely that he resigns with the Ravens, but I don't think that has much to do with the franchise tag. I just think that it was never really likely that they were going to invest money in 2 middle linebackers. The 49ers extended Dre Greenlaw early because they saw the potential and got him at a below market. Well, I mean, linebackers don't make a ton of money, but you can't pay 2 of them.
Right. No, yeah.
Not when you've got a $250 million quarterback.
Exactly. Now looking at Josh Allen getting franchise tagged, their next step priority free agent would be Calvin Ridley, 3 years, $18.5 million a year. What do you feel about this one? Because personally, I think regardless of who gets franchise tagged or not, I don't think they should re-sign Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, not to reiterate what I just said, but I think Calvin Ridley is going to demand a lot of value, a lot of interest on the free agency. Just because there's not a ton of wide receivers out there, especially, we talked for weeks and weeks and weeks about Mike Evans, and it's like, at least an hour and a half of us podcasting is now completely moot because of Mike Evans. But you talk about these players that may or may not become available. Obviously, when they do or don't, Calvin Ridley is a premier, with T. Higgins franchise, he's the premier free agent right now, wide receiver free agent.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's more cuts to come, but
it's not even about that for me, though. It's not even about the money situation. It's more about like, yes, you have to sign the guy, but not only do you have to sign the guy, is the trade package that was put in place for Calvin Ridley is the Jaguars lose out on their 3rd round pick regardless because of Calvin Ridley. But if they sign him, they lose out on their 2nd round pick as well. And yes, he did have over 90 catches, 1,000 yards, a couple touchdowns. Like, yeah, sure, it's a great season. but he's like 29 years old, and you're going to lose out on a second round pick because of him, and you have to pay him on top of that. It's like you're getting hit in the head 3 times because of the guy. And we're not talking about a top line guy. Like, we're not talking about a guy who's consistently 1,000 yards like Mike Evans or Justin Jefferson, or we're not talking about a top 10 guy here. We're just talking about a guy who, yeah, probably a 1 somewhere, or maybe a high level 2, but he's not anything crazy to give up a second, in my opinion. That's what it's about for me.
There's also the small, the compensatory picks that come along with the Ravens losing Patrick Queen.
Yeah.
I don't think Ridley played for them long enough to get a comp pick back, but that's a very, very complicated mathematical analysis of how they do that. Although I think Over the Cap has broken it, and they normally have the comp picks before they come out. But yeah. I mean, I forgot about the second round pick. That changes things big time. I don't know. I don't know if that's the missing piece over there. There's a little bit of a red flag on their quarterback. Obviously, losing a premier talent at wide receiver doesn't help that red flag on quarterback, but they definitely have some things to figure out moving forward.
Yeah. Moving on to the Bears, you are looking at Jalen Johnson getting tagged. Next priority free agent would be Darnell Mooney. He's only projected a 1-year, $9 million contract. Is this more likely, less likely, or it's about the same to get re-signed?
I mean, I put Darnell Mooney as a player that they could look to re-sign this offseason when we talked about them in the divisional rundowns. I don't think it changes much. Obviously, with a potential first-round pick quarterback incoming, you don't want to lose talent. I just think you have to decide if Darnell Mooney is the difference maker for you guys or not. Frankly, with the way they're building that team, I think that if the offense can just be capable, then they're going to take a big step forward next year. I'm surprised you listed him though, and not an extension for Mr. Justin Fields.
No, I like to stir the pot a couple weeks in a row, and then we'll let it simmer down. You put the lid on it, you let it simmer for about 20 to 30 minutes, and then we can go in and jump back onto it again.
All right, fair enough.
I don't think Darnell's honestly going to get re-signed. He's a couple seasons away or removed from his 1,000-yard season now. And I think he could go be a good wide receiver somewhere else. I think it's a good reset for him to go somewhere else. And honestly, they're going to bring in another wide receiver most likely, whether Malik Neighbors falls or Roma Dunze or somebody comes in. They're bringing in somebody else most likely with that 9th overall pick. Sure, they can go and take an offensive lineman or something. Just depends on how the draft kind of falls or if they want to trade up. I just saw a mock draft today of them trading up to go get Malik Neighbors. So, it's possible, but
aren't they so. Isn't that the super, obviously Bears fans hate me even though I like their team. Isn't it a super interesting team to kind of follow right now? Like, just what they're going to do with number 1, what they can get for Justin Fields, what's going to fall to them at their next pick. Cause I did my mock draft last week, and Brock Bowers slid right past them. You know what I mean? Like, it's just one of those things where obviously they have Cole Kmet. He's a pretty good tight end, but Brock Bowers is on a different level. There's potentially a top 10 wide receiver that's going to be sitting there. Like I mentioned before the podcast, I saw a mock today where they moved up and took Marvin Harrison Jr. I think that's a little extreme. I'm not exactly sure if 5 years from now the difference between one of them won't succeed. That's the draft. But between Marvin Harrison Jr., Dunze, and Neighbors, the 2 that succeed out of that group, I think, are probably going to be, pretty similar in production and stuff.
Yeah. Looking at the Colts now, Michael Pittman got tagged. So now the next priority free agent would be Kenny Moore, 2-year, $6.75 million a year contract. A guy who's aging a little bit, a slot corner, more likely, less likely, or about the same for Kenny Moore.
I just think that with a lot of teams trying to get under the cap here going forward, there's going to be a lot of good defensive talent out on the field, and I don't know if you need to re-sign a player that's already coming up on the age where they tend to fall off a lot. On another note, I was surprised by the franchise tag here. Michael Pittman he's a good player, but to franchise tag him with what the franchise tag costs at the wide receiver position it surprised me a little bit. But of course, these could just all be you sign them to the franchise tag tender to give them more time to negotiate. So it wouldn't surprise me if
Sure.
maybe a long-term extension is announced there, because I'm not exactly sure if he's, top 5, top 10 wide receiver money value. So
Yeah, I would agree with that too. If you look at the next one, Antoine Winfield, this one's the not surprising one because he had to get tagged. The next priority guy up, obviously, is going to be Baker Mayfield, 3-year contract at $32.5 million a year is what he's valued at currently. For me personally, I do, is it weird to say this almost feels like a borrowed year for Antoine Winfield? Are the Bucks just hoping that the salary cap takes another jump up so they can go ahead and re-sign him? To have Baker Mayfield, have Mike Evans, have the salary cap situation that they do, it's not great, it's not horrible, but it's not fantastic at the same time. This almost feels like borrowed time. You're just trying to buy a little time. Hopefully the salary cap is going to jump up and you can go ahead and sign him next year, but I don't think they're getting a deal done this year, personally.
Well, don't you think that it says big things about what their confidence is in re-signing Baker Mayfield to a long-term extension? The fact that they used the tag on Anton Winfield, you know what I mean? Because it feels like if they were like, oh, we're not sure about this Baker situation, they would have just used it on him,
Yeah.
And the fact that they didn't, Antoine Winfield probably would have been a top 3 player on defense if he had hit the open market free agency wise, and probably would have got paid. He's probably pretty frustrated with the fact that he got the free agent tag, but then again, you have an entire year to work out something for him. And
yeah, for sure.
That's not a player that it's not a bad thing if you pay a player like Winfield, because he's not just your standard safety. He brings a ton to the table.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. A couple of guys that we've already talked about now at this point. T. Higgins getting tagged. The next up on priority free agent is DJ Reader. 3-year, $15.25 million a year for the interior defensive lineman. So same question, more or less about the same for DJ.
I think it's about the same. I identify him as a player that they need to bring back. I don't think that changes with tagging T. Higgins.
Yeah.
The hard part with these franchise tags is there's a couple teams out there that it's like, okay, did they tag him to give them a better chance at extending him, or did they tag him because they're thinking about trying to move him, and what's the best way to do that? And the Bengals kind of fall in that category. Franchise tag or not, I'm not sure if T. Higgins is on the Bengals to start the season. So you don't want to lose other important players on your team, because of that tag. So I think bringing DJ Reader back has to be at least a priority to try to get it to where it makes sense. Now, if some team swoops in and offers him a ton of money, defensive tackles are, the 49ers kind of set the precedent on that contract with what they did with Hargrave last year, which might have been maybe not a great decision in hindsight, but he's a good player. I really like DJ Reader. I'd take him on my team.
Right. And then the last one is L'Jarius Sneed and Chris Jones. We're going to have to set the precedent for that one. I think for Chris, this is more likely to get signed. You definitely don't want him to get franchise tagged. We talked about it last week. For the people who didn't see it, you don't want Chris Jones to get franchise tagged. The reason why you don't is because his franchise tag would be $10 million higher than the franchise tag for a defensive tackle because of the amount of money that he made last season. So you don't franchise tag him. But with L'Jarius Sneed not getting a long-term deal currently, Chiefs fall into one of those same things with the Bengals. Could potentially be a tag and trade situation with L'Jarius Sneed. And then Chris Jones getting an extension, I think, is pretty likely.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm Chris Jones, I'm just waiting. I'm just going to wait. Just like he did last season, where he kind of held out in the beginning. You got a couple of rings now. Players win.
Yeah.
The motivation, the length of a career on the defensive line in the NFL is not very, very long. So unless they're willing to extend him at market value or above, I think he might just hold out and see what he can, what's out there for him. But we'll see. I mean, there's a couple teams that have a lot of cap space this season, and Chris Jones would make those teams a lot better.
Yeah, for sure. And you have to, I feel like Chris Jones is one of those guys who's kind of quiet and you don't really know what he kind of wants to do. He's already won a couple of rings. Does he want to stay and continue to build on that? Or does he want to go somewhere else and go chase even more money? You know how much money you're going to make from the Chiefs. Again, he's currently at 4 years, $30 million a year. I mean, he's already 32? right? He's up there, right? This would basically make him a Chief for life. This would be essentially, you would think, for Chris Jones, this is my last contract.
It's tough because he has the rings, man.
Mm-hmm.
Teams will come sign with these teams to try to win a ring, but he's got them twice, and this is his last contract most likely. And nothing you do at this point can tarnish your legacy. Like the Chiefs traded away one of the best wide receivers in NFL history to keep you. Yeah. And they won 2 rings off of that decision. Like, your legacy is cemented, bro, no matter what you do. Whether you re-sign with the Chiefs or you go get paid massively elsewhere, it really doesn't matter at this point. Your legacy is cemented. So, yeah. But, NFL players are weird. Like, there's not a ton of them. There's not a ton of movement. This isn't the NBA where every 2 years the superstars all change teams. So I think the money would be on him re-signing. But if I were him, I would just wait it out a little bit, because, of course, I say that in whatever time free agency starts, midnight on whatever it'll be. The Chiefs have extended Chris Jones to a 3-year, $110 million, etc. So, yeah, we'll see. Couple interesting weeks coming up.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And then, so that means guys who didn't get tagged and didn't get extended